My wife came back pregnant by another man, and then she asked me to raise this child. I met Claire on a Saturday afternoon in late June, the kind of day when the air smells like barbecue smoke and freshly cut grass. We were at a backyard party thrown by mutual friends, the kind where folding chairs sink slightly into the lawn, and someone's playlist is just loud enough to make conversation feel like a shared secret. I was hovering over the grill, pretending I knew more about cooking than I did, when she walked up holding an empty plate. She had this half smile that made you think she was about to make a joke at your expense, then let you in on it. "Are you checking that steak's temperature or just staring at it for moral support?" she asked. It wasn't much, but it was the first line of a conversation that lasted the rest of the day. By the time the sun went down, we'd already swapped numbers, made vague plans about hiking, and agreed that life was too short for bad coffee. The first few years with Claire felt like the perfect road trip. Windows down, music up, everything ahead of us. We saved for weekend getaways instead of furniture, made dinner out of whatever was in the fridge, and spent nights talking until clock embarrassed us. 2 years in, we got married in a small garden behind an old library. We didn't have a big budget, but we had good friends and a lot of laughter. Someone strung fairy lights across the trees, and we danced on a patch of grass that had seen better days. At the time, I thought that was the definition of happiness. Choosing someone every single day, without question. Life after the wedding was simple, but good. We found a small apartment with creaky floors and a kitchen, just big enough where 2 people bump hips while cooking. I worked long days at a solar installation company. Claire was in graphic design, the kind of job that made her eyes light up when she got a project she believed in. We weren't perfect, but we were steady. We shared chores, saved for a condo, and had a corkboard map with pins marking all the places we wanted to visit. Some were realistic, Seattle in the fall, the Oregon coast. Others were pure dreams, Lisbon, Kyoto, a cabin in Norway where the sky turns green in winter. But about 8 months ago, something in the air shifted. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting matches or slammed doors, just a quiet drifting. Claire started spending more evenings with her phone in hand, scrolling with a kind of intensity that left little room for conversation. When I asked what she was looking at, she'd say, work emails, or just catching up with friends. I wanted to believe her. I think I did. We still had dinners together. But they felt different, like 2 people eating at the same table but living in separate rooms. Some nights, she'd say she was too tired to talk. Other nights, she'd laugh at something on her phone and not explain the joke. I told myself it was a phase. Everyone gets busy. People go through quiet spells. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice was already whispering that this was the beginning of something I didn't want to name. The drift didn't come with thunder. It arrived like fog, settling into corners and softening edges, until even the familiar looked a little far away. Claire kept her phone face down on the table now, a courtesy that felt more like a curtain. She started saying things like, "I'm just somewhere else lately," and I would nod because where else do you start when the person you love is disappearing in plain sight? One Tuesday night, while the pasta boiled and the pot lid rattled like a polite warning, she said, "I think we should try therapy." She didn't say like an ultimatum or plea, more like a map direction from someone who's already turned the car. I found someone, Dr. Lynn. Couples work, lots of good reviews. I stared at the pot, then at Claire. "Okay," I said, "let's go." Dr. Lynn's office smelled faintly of eucalyptus and old books. The waiting room had forgiving chairs and a basket of stress balls that seemed both on the nose and necessary. Inside her office were 2 identical armchairs and a clock that ticked softly, determined to make progress 1 second at a time. Dr. Lynn was in her 50s, with a kind of steady posture that suggested she'd seen storms and stopped trying to control the weather. "So," she said after introductions, folding her hands over a yellow legal pad, "tell me how you met." We told her about the backyard, the grill jokes, the way we'd spent a whole summer pretending forever was a place she could drive to. It was easy. Then she asked, "And when did you first feel the connection thin?" The room tightened half a degree. We glanced at each other, like students hoping the other would raise a hand. 8 months ago, I said, maybe a little before. Claire nodded. Everything got noisier. Work, expectations. I started wondering who I was when I wasn't being yes. She used air quotes without irony, then winced at herself. Sorry, that sounded awful. It sounded honest, Dr. Lin said. Session 1 was awkward in the ways first steps are. We answered the basic questions. Conflict style, family scripts, who shuts down, who pursues. I learned my fix-it voice lands like sandpaper. Claire learned her silence isn't neutral. It reads like a locked door. Afterward, we walked to the car without touching. That wasn't so bad, I said. It wasn't, she agreed, but her eyes were somewhere a few inches past me, like she was reading a subtitle I couldn't see. By session 2, Dr. Lin had us charting arguments like weather maps, where the pressure began, which front collided with which coastline. We practiced repair attempts, phrases to throw across the room before the riptide pulled us out. I'm getting flooded. Can we pause? I'm trying to hear you. It felt scripted until it didn't. We left lighter. We ate tacos and made jokes about graduating to gold stars. Session 3 was about boundaries. Work versus home, screens versus faces. Dr. Lin asked for phone-free dinners and a 30-minute check-in 3 times a week. Pretend your attention is a scarce resource, she said. Spend it on purpose. For a few days, it worked. We cooked without the TV and rediscovered the pleasure of chopping in rhythm. Claire told me about a difficult client and let me see the part of her that's most alive when she solves something beautiful. I talked about a roof array we'd finally commissioned after winter delays, how the meters ticked up like hope. We went to bed a little earlier and met in the middle more often. I started to believe the fog might actually lift. Then Harper re-entered orbit. Harper had been Claire's college roommate, a meteor of charisma with a tale of opinions. She favored phrases like self-betrayal and radical clarity, and posted long threads about people refusing to own their truth. I respected her intelligence and hated the way I braced when Claire's phone lit up with her name. After session 3, Claire met Harper for a late drink. When she came home, her shoulders were square the way they get when she's rehearsed sentences. We brushed our teeth like strangers sharing a sink. In bed, in the dark, she said, Harper thinks therapy is only useful if we stop performing. She says we keep project managing our marriage instead of telling the truth about how we feel. Okay, I said slowly. What truth? She says comfort can be a cage. I stared at the ceiling. Comfort is also a home. It can be both, Claire whispered. At session 4, Dr. Lin asked us to name our ghosts. Who's in the room with you when you argue, she said. Parents? Past relationships? Cultural scripts? I said impatience, perfectionism, a father who believed silence was superior to saying the wrong thing. Claire said something I wasn't prepared for. Logan, she said, eyes on her hands. My ex from years ago. I thought I was over it, but lately, I think about him. Not as a person go back to just what I felt then, how bright everything seemed. I miss that version of me. I could feel the floor shift a centimeter. Dr. Lin nodded like a midwife who's seen this kind of contraction before. Missing a feeling isn't the same as missing a person, she said. But it can be dangerous if you start treating your current life as a thief of that feeling. On the drive home, Claire was quiet. At a red light, she said, Does it scare you when I say his name? It scares me when you say you miss who you were with him. I said, because I don't know how to compete with a ghost. You're not supposed to compete, she said gently. You're supposed to see me. I'm right here, I said and meant it, and also felt how little that sentence can do against a story someone's writing in their head. That night, while she showered, her phone buzzed and lit the room with a white square. A preview banner slid across the screen. Harper, you can't heal in a container that made you small. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. The words hovered between us even after the screen went dark. I lay awake counting the seconds on the bedroom clock, the same soft tick as Dr. Lin's office. Somewhere between 2 and 3 a.m., I admitted the thing I'd been avoiding. Therapy was helping us talk, but it was also stripping us of the conveniences we used to hide behind. With the clutter gone, there was more space. For truth, for fear, for someone else's voice to echo louder. In the morning, Claire made coffee and handed me a mug without looking up. Session 5 next week, she said. Dr. Lin wants us to come with a list of non-negotiables. Okay, I said. I didn't know it then, but a list was coming either way. One that would rearrange everything we call the future and confirm what I'd been smelling in the air for months. Smoke from a bridge I hadn't even realized we'd already started to burn. The 5th session began like the ones before it. 2 chairs angled just enough to suggest cooperation, a small table between them with a neat box of tissues, and Dr. Lin's yellow legal pad waiting like an empty verdict. Outside, rain traced slow rivers down the window. Inside, the ticking clock filled the spaces we didn't speak. Dr. Lin folded her hands. Last time, we talked about your non-negotiables, she said. What you each need to feel safe, valued, and chosen. I'd made my list in the car on the way over. Scribble on the back of the gas receipt. Honesty that isn't edited for comfort. Dinners without phones. Affection that doesn't feel like a scheduled chore. And the right to admit fear without being told I'm just too attached to stability. I read it aloud, trying to sound calm. Claire stared at her own page for so long, I thought she wouldn't speak. She folded it once, then unfolded it. Finally, without looking at me, she said, I have to tell you something before I can say what I need. And it might ruin everything. Dr. Lin leaned in slightly. Say it gently, but say it. Claire's voice was steady, but her hands were tight around the paper. Before Ethan, there was Logan, my first big love. The kind of love that's messy and too bright, where you write poems you think are brilliant, but they're not. I left him because it wasn't a life. It was a fire. I married Ethan because he was safe, solid, the harbor I thought I needed. She took a breath, and when her eyes met mine, they were wet but unflinching. I still think about him, not because I want him back exactly, but because I miss me when I was with him. That version of me. I've tried to grow out of it, but I can't. I think about him every day. The room went so still I could hear the soft tap of rain against the glass. Dr. Lin's pen hovered over the paper. What does that mean for Ethan? Claire's words landed like a slow knife. I love you, she said, but not the way I thought I would. I chose stability over passion, and part of me still wants a passion. I don't know if I can love you the way you deserve while I'm grieving that. I sat there, trying to translate what she'd said into something survivable. I heard that I'm the harbor. I said finally, and you still want the fire. She flinched. That's maybe true. Dr. Lin looked at me. How do you feel hearing that? Like something shifted. I said, and it's not shifting back. Claire looked down, as if there might be answers on the carpet. I don't want to hurt you. You already did, I said, my voice quieter than I expected. Now we figure out what to do with that. When the session ended, neither of us moved right away. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air felt heavier. In the car, we drove home in silence. At a red light, a couple crossed in front of us, holding hands like the world couldn't touch them. I'll take the couch tonight, I said when we parked. She nodded. That nod felt final, like signing a document neither of us wanted to read again. For 2 days after that session, the house became a museum of unfinished sentences. We spoke only about what was necessary, groceries, the dog's vet appointment, whether the dryer was making that sound again. Everything else stayed locked behind our teeth. On the 3rd night, I couldn't sleep. The couch felt like a raft in the middle of a dark ocean. Around 2 a.m., I heard Claire's voice from the kitchen, low, careful. She was on the phone. I told myself it was work. A late email read aloud. A friend in another time zone. But then I heard his name. Logan. No, I can't just leave. It's not that simple. The quiet after his name felt sharper than the words themselves. I stayed still, barely breathing. I'm trying, she whispered, her voice almost breaking. You think I don't replay it every night? But he's good to me. He doesn't deserve. A pause. I know you hate that I married him. I realized I was gripping the couch cushion, so hard my knuckles hurt. Her voice softened in a way I hadn't heard in months. You were the fire, Logan. But fire burns, remember? I can't let it burn everything. A chair scraped against the floor. Footsteps. I lay back, eyes shut, pretending sleep as she passed through the living room. The smell of her shampoo lingered, faint but unmistakable. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. She poured coffee, asked about my plans for the day. I wanted to throw the mug against the wall and demand she say his name to my face. Instead, I just said, "Same as usual." I told Caleb that afternoon. My brother listened without interrupting, then leaned back in his chair. "She's keeping a foot in two worlds," he said. "And therapy?" That was her way of easing into telling you she never fully left his. She said she chose me for stability. Caleb's jaw tightened. "That's not a compliment, Ethan. That's a confession that you were Plan B." The words settled heavy between us. I didn't want to believe him, but the 2 a.m. whisper replayed in my mind like an echo. That night, Claire suggested we skip the next therapy session. "I think we need space," she said. I almost laughed. Space was all we'd had lately. "Fine," I said, "but don't mistake my silence for not paying attention." She looked at me then, really looked, as if trying to decide whether I already knew more than I was saying. I didn't give her the answer. The next week felt like a countdown I couldn't see but could feel in my chest. Claire's routines became unpredictable. She'd leave for errands and come back hours later, smelling faintly a cologne that wasn't mine. Her phone, once left casually on the counter, was now glued to her hand. On Thursday, Caleb stopped by unannounced. He didn't bother with small talk. "Ethan, I'm telling you, something's off. I've seen her car parked by the Riverview Hotel twice this week." I froze. "You followed her?" He shrugged. "Call it curiosity. Or call it me not wanting to watch my brother get played." The idea of Claire at a hotel hit me like cold water down my spine. I tried to picture it. Her walking to the lobby, looking over her shoulder, scanning for someone. And the someone wasn't me. That night, I tested the waters. "So how was your day?" I asked over dinner. "Busy," she replied, stabbing her salad. "Meetings, emails, you know." "Where?" I pressed. Her fork paused midair. "What do you mean, where?" "At work." "Why?" I shrugged, masking the churn in my gut. "Just curious." Her eyes narrowed. "You've been acting strange lately." I almost laughed at the hypocrisy. "Right," I said, leaning back. "Must be my imagination." Later, when she was in the shower, I checked the laundry basket. Her blouse from earlier carried a trace of cologne. Not strong, just enough to feel like a fingerprint left behind. The next morning, Caleb texted me a photo. It was Claire, stepping out of the Riverview lobby, phone in hand. The timestamp was from yesterday. My hands trembled, but not from shock, from confirmation. By Friday evening, I'd made a decision. If she was meeting Logan, I needed proof that would leave no room for lies. Caleb offered to come with me. We sat in his truck across from the hotel, waiting. An hour passed. Then, there she was, hair tied back, dressed in that pale blue sweater she wore on our first anniversary. She wasn't alone. A tall man with sandy hair walked beside her, his hand brushing hers as they disappeared into the building. Caleb muttered a curse. I just stared, the part of me that had still been holding out hope finally going silent. "She's not coming back from this," he said. I didn't answer. I was already thinking about the next step. Not just catching her, but ending it in a way she couldn't twist into her own story. I didn't sleep that night. The image of Claire walking into the hotel with him kept looping in my mind like a cruel film reel. By morning, I wasn't just hurt. I was done. Caleb dropped off a flash drive before work. "Photos, videos, timestamps," he said. "If she tries to lie, you've got her cornered." I spent the day in quiet preparation. Copies of our financial statements, property deeds, and joint account balances went into a folder. I called a divorce attorney and scheduled a meeting for Monday. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was steady, the way it feels before pulling a trigger you've already decided on. When Claire came home that evening, she was humming softly, scrolling her phone. I watched her put her purse down and head to the kitchen like nothing in the world was wrong. "Claire," I said, my voice calm, almost too calm. She glanced up. "Yeah." I slid the flash drive across the counter. "Why don't you plug that into your laptop and tell me what you see?" Her smile faltered. What is this? Proof, I said. Her fingers hovered over the drive. Proof of what? Of you and Logan. Riverview Hotel. This week. Twice. She froze, color draining from her face. Ethan, it's not. Don't. I cut in. Don't insult me with a lie right to my face. She swallowed hard. We just talked. He's an old friend. In a hotel room? For hours. My voice sharpened. You think I'm a fool? Her eyes flashed with anger. You've been spying on me? No, I said, leaning forward. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. For a moment, she looked like she might cry. Then her expression hardened. Maybe I wouldn't have gone to him if you actually listened to me. I let out a bitter laugh. Right, so this is my fault. Silence stretched between us. Then I stood, sliding the folder of documents onto the counter. These are our assets. Monday, my lawyer will contact yours. I'm filing. Her mouth opened in protest, but I was already walking toward the door. Ethan, please, we can fix this. I stopped, turning back just enough to meet her eyes. No, you can't fix something you broke on purpose. I left her standing there, still clutching the flash drive, as I walked out into the cool night air. For the first time in months, I felt a strange sense of clarity. 2 days after I told Claire it was over, she showed up at my office. No call, no warning, just walked in like she still had the right to. I was halfway through a meeting when my receptionist cracked the door open. Ethan, your wife's here. Says it's urgent. Ex-wife-to-be, I thought, but I stepped out anyway. She was sitting in the waiting area, dressed in the same navy dress she wore on our anniversary 2 years ago. Makeup perfect, hair done just the way I used to like it. 5 minutes. I told her, leading her to the break room. She didn't waste time. Ethan, please. I made a mistake. A huge one. I was stupid. I was selfish. But we've built a life together. You can't just throw it away. I leaned against the counter, arms folded. You didn't throw it away, Claire. You set it on fire. Her eyes glistened. We can still fix it. We can go back to therapy. I can cut all ties with him. I'll do anything. I shook my head slowly. You said therapy was for honesty. And you were honest. You told me you loved someone else. That's not something we patch up with a few sessions. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I'm pregnant, Ethan. The words hit like a punch, but I didn't move. Is it mine? I asked. She hesitated just long enough for me to have my answer. I don't know, she whispered. I let out a long breath, feeling something inside me snap into place. Then we're done. Completely. I'm not raising another man's child because you couldn't decide who you wanted. Her face crumpled, but then something shifted. The pleading gave way to anger. You're heartless. After everything we've been through, you can't forgive one mistake. One mistake. My voice rose. Claire, this wasn't a slip. This was months of lying, sneaking around and planning. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. She backed away like my words physically pushed her. You'll regret this, she said finally. Maybe, I replied, opening the door for her. But I'll regret it a lot less than staying with someone who didn't choose me the first time. She left without another word. I stood there for a moment, the quiet of the office settling around me. For the first time since this whole thing began, I felt no pull, no hesitation, just certainty. 6 months later, my life barely resembled the wreckage Claire left behind. The divorce was finalized, the house was mine, and Sophie, the woman I met 2 months after it all ended, had quietly filled spaces I didn't realize were empty. We weren't rushing into anything. Sophie understood the scars, never pushed too hard, never tried to erase what happened. She simply made room for herself in my life. Dinners after work, hiking on weekends, long talks late into the night. She made me laugh again, and that alone felt like a miracle. I hadn't heard from Claire since that day in my office, but I knew through mutual friends that things hadn't gone well. Logan had cut her off completely, denying the child was his. The paternity test proved what I suspected. It wasn't mine. Logan didn't even show up to court for the custody hearing. and Claire was left to raise the baby alone in a cramped apartment. Every now and then, I'd catch sight of her in town. Once, she was in the grocery store, hair unkempt, eyes hollow, rocking a fussy infant while scrolling through her phone. She didn't notice me, or maybe she did and chose to look through me. Either way, I kept walking. One evening, Caleb and I were sitting on my back porch, beer bottles sweating in the summer heat. When he brought her up, "She asked about you," he said. I didn't bite, and she wanted to know if you'd talked to her. Said she's sorry, that she wishes she'd chosen differently. I stared out at the fading sky. Tell her I hope she finds what she's looking for, but I'm not it anymore. He nodded, and that was the last time her name passed between us. The real closure came weeks later at a restaurant Sophie and I liked. As we were leaving, I saw Claire sitting alone at a corner table, half-finished glass of wine in front of her. She looked up, eyes meeting mine for a second. There was no flash of anger this time, no pleading, just a tired resignation. I gave her a small nod, nothing more. She didn't smile, didn't wave. I walked out into the warm night with Sophie's hand in mine, the sound of our laughter carrying down the street. In that moment, I understood something. Closure isn't about a conversation or an apology. It's about knowing you build a life that no longer has room for the person who once tried to destroy you. And mine was finally whole again,